At last, Blizzard finally listened to the players and they gave us what we already had since Warcraft 3, High Elves in the Alliance.
No, that was the Alliance of Lordaeron, because you see, the main government of Silvermoon, I believe, yeah, I think it was them, they didn't sign with the modern Alliance because they were more focused on obtaining a new source of
Silence, horde filth. Finally, playable elves after 15 years.
And you have Void Elves, which are technically...
I don't want your babble. The real elves, they're finally here. Fair skin, beautiful blue eyes, the way all elves were supposed to look. Pure, untainted.
You told me to shut up.
I just want the lore to be accurate.
Hey, it's Soul, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly, the show that wraps up the highlights of this week's Warcraft news because, hey, you ain't got time for all that. You're too busy partying and guaranteeing the demise of BlizzCon 2020. Thanks, This, along with every episode, is supported by viewers like you and the Brutosaur fans over on the Twitch channel who got to see me in my partially naked glory this week. It was a really good run, though. And of course, the patrons, including newcomers Dreadswarm, Summerlin, John, and Bill. If you want to help keep the air conditioner running, please, pretty please, oh god, please, consider signing up to be a patron today. The main story of this week is not whatever we learned from the most recent Shadowlands alpha build. It's not about the cancellation of BlizzCon 2020, which almost all of us knew and were only waiting for it to be official. Not often do you see a massive influx of commentary in Wowhead unless it's about the idea of the High Elves being a playable race for the Alliance. After a nearly endless debate, thousands of angry posts, countless arguments, and Ian Hazzikostas lording over this like it was a break-in case of emergency case, we have come to the end of the road. You've done it. Your feedback, your lore forensics, and explanations, and yada 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 have beat Ian down like a drum. And what you deserve is finally yours. But it's not really. It's not quite like making a selection and seeing High Elf with High Elf history and a capital and racial abilities and a faction leader. It's hardly that at all. It's merely customization of Void Elves to have the fair-skinned and blue-eyed look, which... man, talk about first world problems in a time like this. But anyway, Alliance are still technically selecting Void Elves as their playable race. Here's the double whammy though. The Blood Elf race will also get additional customization options to give them that High Elf look, namely the blue eyes. Somewhere within the fringes of Horde and Alliance fans are those who believe that High Elves belong to them, like a body pillow. Yeah, I went there. I'd get into the debates, but then this would be Warcraft Weekly Part 1 of 6, the High Elf Cluster Festival, and you're not interested in that, are you? Don't answer that. According to a very recent post, and I'm going to read it down on the screen, he says, honestly, that was the plan at the time, but the game is vast, so specific questions often go unexamined while attention is elsewhere. After that interview when he was talking about blue-eyed Blood Elves and such, the team spun a fresh conversation about Blood Elf and Void Elf customization options. The recent blog lays out where we ended up. What Blizzard ultimately decided to do here is insidious. It's kind of cruel, it's sort of half-assed, and yet it's brilliant, it's intentional, and it's easy. So here's what I mean. First, I'm going to make the assumption that unlike the Night Warrior customizations that came to Night Elves a couple of patches ago, the new skin tones and eye colors coming to all of the races, including Blood and Void Elves, are just going to be added to the character creation screen with no additional work needed. We just get it. By doing so, Blizzard has basically wiped its hands clean of having to explain why these elves now have blue eyes, different colored skin or whatever. Just like how golden eyes were added for Blood Elves a few patches ago, Blizzard can just make up whatever excuse sounds most convenient, like what was said. I mean, if Ian were to follow up on this, what would he say? Maybe it would go like this. So with all that said, High Elves have always been a diverse race with different skin tones, eye colors, and more. It just hasn't been reflected in-game. With this customization revamp, now we can add a lot more diversity to the races that frankly should have been there all along. Or in other words, everyone's gonna get High Elves, there's no race change sale coming, and thanks for the money. So in hindsight, the High Elves slowly got their own Pandoran treatment, just better maybe? They're all High Elves, but political decisions and wacky experiments set them down different paths. But the debate is hardly over, notably for Void Elf players. Now that they've got their foot in the door with the cosmetics, now there's a growing call for a Paladin race class combination, which I personally find a little bit contradictory. Now, I get it. Lightforged Draenei can be Shadow Priests, Void Elves and Undead can be Holy Priests. Imagine the outcry and the technicalities that would come if Void Elves could only be Discipline or Shadow Priests. But we're not talking about priests, we're talking about Paladins, whose specializations are unyieldingly aligned with the light. There doesn't need to be a story to explain eye or skin color. I mean, golden eyes, kind of sort of. Golden eyes are a little bit weird. But I at least need something to explain why these elves, whose story led them down this path of the void, would still allow them to call upon the light, or the voidy light, the light void, whatever. In the end, it's not that big of a deal if Blizzard were to relent on this too, but, well, Silvermoon City is still ours. BAM! Haha! Horde bias, baby!
No one goes there anyway, jerkface.
On a final note, once upon a time I talked up the idea of undead paladins as a race class combo, and made up some lore to back up the plausibility, despite the obvious issues. Now, that video, not everyone liked it, but here we are today. If you're a supporter of Void Elf Paladins, I don't see a reason why you shouldn't also support undead paladins. You might be thinking, yeah, but no, shh, you're in it now. You're one of us. Oh, and as a final note, just go nuts with the hair. It's just hair color. Give them the blonde, whatever. I mean, it's 2020. Hair dye exists, okay? On June 9th, eyeballs across the world will be on Twitch and YouTube streams featuring game director Hazzikostas, as well as vice president and executive producer of World of Warcraft, John Hight. Speculation is abound as to what's going to be talked about, considering that they're letting us know 2 weeks in advance. This is weird. For some context, Blizzard announced the event to reveal the Warlords of Draenor release date and cinematic reveal 8 days in advance. We've heard plenty of Ian lately, from streams to offline interviews and such, but this time we're going to hear from John Hight, who has the former job of J. Allen Brack, the current president of Blizzard Entertainment, meaning John oversees both the classic and modern game. Now, what might they talk about? I'm going to repeat myself from an earlier video, but you were probably glued to the elf stuff, so I'm just going to help jog your memory. We're likely to get a pleasant and reassuring roadmap to the future of Warcraft for the remainder of this year, all to reassure fans and to continue their cadence of communication, which, if you haven't noticed, has been way better during Shadowlands. We'll probably get expected timeframes for what else is coming down the pike in the alpha. We might be told the approximate month when Shadowlands will switch from the alpha to the beta. We're likely to get a release date for the expansion, and maybe even a first glimpse at what's coming in the physical Collector's Edition set. I anticipate a cinematic. Inviting us to join them for a stream 2 weeks in advance on both Twitch and YouTube is, it's probably part of some YouTube agreement, but I think they really want our attention so we can all share a moment together. A cinematic is typically the big unifying thing for us as fans to go, whoa, about, And without a BlizzCon this year, this is the virtual stage. Not quite as likely, but I expect John to say something about WoW Classic. It could be the same thing, like a roadmap to AQ, since that's the next big thing coming, and maybe to get Classic fans excited for the future of Classic, namely Burning Crusade Classic. This feels like a long way off for sure, but I think announcing it alone would bring in a strong surge of players, notably the ones who didn't care as much for WoW Classic, but would be extremely excited for BC Classic, or even Wrath Classic, because announcing BC would pretty much guarantee a follow-up too. It could be that the cinematic I mentioned earlier would be the BC Classic reveal. I mean, not exactly a whoa moment, but it still would be really cool. But we might be totally sidelined too. We know mobile games are in development over at Blizzard, and there's a lot of data mined information about an auto battle or minigame coming in WoW Shadowlands that will also be playable on mobile. This year also would have been the year to announce a standalone title such as the highly anticipated pet-based Warcraft game. Blizzard would have been the perfect time to announce it and launch it simultaneously. But instead, we might just get an announcement in a couple of weeks. A gameplay trailer and an opportunity for early access. I know I'm piling on a lot of expectations, and maybe the basis of it, the advance notice and having a VP present, it might not equate to anything more than just John wanting to have some human interaction. As mentioned earlier, Blizzcon 2020 is a bust, due to obvious concerns over the pandemic, which medical experts have predicted will have a resurgence or a second wave towards the fall. A lot of us were holding out hope that the virus would be under control towards the end of the year, but regardless, most gatherings that could have been instead cancelled. And I gotta say, I'm upset that there won't be a BlizzCon this year, but dude, I don't want to get sick, right? And more importantly, I don't want to get my loved ones sick, let alone fellow Blizzard fans and WoW fans and all the content creating rivals that I secretly hate.
He's just kidding, folks. It's more jealousy than hate.
And it's not even a year for a WoW expansion announcement, so I ain't missing nothing big.
I don't know if he's kidding about that one.
In all seriousness though, I shouldn't really be patting Blizzard on the back for deciding that public safety might be in their best interest, or that living customers are paying customers. But I do appreciate that they're taking a responsible approach. In their statement earlier this week, they write, "We're talking about how we might be able to channel the BlizzCon spirit and connect with you in some way online. Far less impacted by the state of health and safety protocols for mass in-person gatherings. We'd want to do this as soon as we could, but given that this is a newish territory and the different factors involved, it will most likely be sometime early next year." BlizzCon is also a stage for big esports events in Blizzard games each year, so we're also looking into alternatives for supporting some of the high-level competition that would normally take place at the show. So my speculation earlier of there being a virtual BlizzCon in November, basically out the window. Although that doesn't mean that there can't be a bigger than normal spectacle to celebrate the launch of Shadowlands, and it opens the door to speculate an early November launch date. I have a good feeling that on June 9th we're going to learn a lot more about what's ahead for 2020. All that said, I'm sad. I've been to 10 BlizzCons so far, and I was really looking forward to meeting viewers, potential target fellow content creators, my guild, and of course, chicken and waffles. And especially with what we're all facing now, many of us alone, surrounded by this crippling disease and in some places growing civil unrest, and my heart goes out to everyone who's affected, for what little that's worth. A bright, shining light to unite our community of gamers would feel really, really refreshing right now. So, not the way that I really wanted to end the show, especially if an alpha build comes like late Friday, and if it is, I don't know, by the time you're watching this, I'll hopefully be in Torghast on my Paladin, but if not, I'm going to be in a corner somewhere, crying somewhere, and having ice cream. We still had some big news with the cosmetic elf situation, and there was a small interview Blizzard had with website Polygon, which I'm going to link in the video description. For those of you without ad block, you might have noticed that below the video, you no longer see shirts or mugs with Bob sitting on a toilet. That's because the company that made this swag unceremoniously dropped me without notification and won't respond to my emails. Maybe the product is too lewd and Bob needs an OnlyFans account, I don't know. But I'm poking around looking for a new home to sell some swag that isn't, I don't know, over-sexualized. As far as I know though, orders that did go through, they are being processed and product is on the way, just to reassure folks. Otherwise, I don't know what to do. I have no recourse, unfortunately. Anyway, back to the outro. Next week, we hope to look forward to another build to explore, but if not, and we have 2 weeks without an update to the Shadowlands Alpha, we can expect a huge update to follow whatever the heck it is that Ian and John have to say. So don't forget to stay tuned here by subscribing to the channel. Hit that like button too, because, that helps, and I want to continue bringing you more of this and all things Warcraft. Please be careful out there, and I'll see you next week. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy. you.